Hello and welcome. Something has gone terribly wrong with the magic that binds dragonkind. Across Faerun, dragons are losing their minds to an ancient curse that should not be active. The King Killer Star, that comet whose appearance in the heavens traditionally triggers the Dracorage Mythal, is nowhere in the sky. Yet dragons rage anyway, their sanity stripped away by forces they cannot comprehend or resist. The year is 1373 Dale Reckoning, and you are about to witness what will come to be known as the Year of Rogue Dragons, a catastrophe that will reshape the relationship between dragons and the younger races forever. You need to understand that this rage is different from all those that came before. The Dracorage Mythal, that ancient elven construct designed to punish dragonkind, has been corrupted by a lich named Samaster. This former chosen of Mystra, founder of the cult of the dragon, has spent decades studying the mythal structure, searching for weaknesses he could exploit. His goal is not random destruction, but calculated chaos, a year-long madness that will kill countless dragons and drive the survivors into his cult's waiting arms. By tying his own phylactery to the mythal's power, Samaster has activated the curse without its celestial trigger, catching dragonkind completely unprepared. The history of the Dracorage Mythal stretches back thousands of years to the height of elven civilization. In an age when dragons ruled the skies unchallenged and the younger races huddled in their shadows, the high mages of an elven empire decided that dragonkind needed restraint. They witnessed dragons warring among themselves with such ferocity that entire regions became uninhabitable. They saw chromatic worms treating other races as livestock or playthings. Even metallic dragons, for all their claims of benevolence, seemed too powerful and too long-lived to be trusted with unchecked authority over mortal affairs. So the elven archmages created the Mythal, a permanent magical effect woven into the very fabric of the world. Unlike ordinary spells that fade when their casters die or their energy depletes, Mythals draw power directly from the weave itself, sustaining themselves across millennia. The Dracorage Mythal was designed with elegant brutality. It would lie dormant for decades or centuries, allowing dragons to grow complacent, to forget the threat it posed. Then, when the King Killer Star appeared in the night sky, the Mythal would awaken and drive every dragon within its area of effect into mindless, homicidal rage. The Mythal's reach encompassed roughly 250,000 square miles of Faerun, covering all the major population centers and the territories where dragons most commonly made their lairs. Within this zone, the Mythal's magic targeted something fundamental to draconic nature. It did not impose madness from outside like a curse or enchantment that could be dispelled. Instead, it amplified emotions already present in every dragon's psyche: territorial aggression, predatory instinct, the ancient fury that simmered beneath even the most civilized worm's thoughts. When the Mythal activated, these suppressed impulses overwhelmed rational thought, reducing dragons to their most primal, violent selves. Over the millennia, dragons learned to predict the king-killer star's appearances through careful astronomical observation. As the comet approached, dragons would take precautions. Ancient worms sealed themselves in specially prepared lairs, protected by wards designed to contain their raged selves. Some created extra-dimensional prisons where they could thrash harmlessly until the madness passed. Others fled to different planes entirely, spending weeks or months in Sigil, the elemental planes, or even stranger realms where the Mythal's influence could not reach. These preparations minimized the damage each rage could inflict, though they never eliminated it entirely. Young dragons, lacking the resources and wisdom of their elders, often failed to secure themselves properly. Dragons caught traveling when the rage struck would fall from the sky or attack whatever was nearest. Some dragons, arrogant or skeptical of the old warnings, refused to believe they could lose control of their own minds. These unfortunates discovered the truth too late, their last sane thoughts consumed by the rising tide of fury. Each rage claimed dragon lives and mortal lives, adding new chapters to a tragic history that spanned thousands of years. But the rage of 1373 Dale reckoning breaks every pattern. When the first reports reach major cities, describing dragons attacking without warning or provocation, the initial assumption is that some local trigger has set off individual worms. Perhaps a dragon's horde was robbed, or an alliance broke down, or territorial disputes escalated. Only when reports multiply, coming from across Faerun simultaneously, does the horrifying truth become apparent. This is a rage, but it should not be possible. Astronomers confirm the king-killer star is nowhere near Faerun's skies. Its orbit places it on the far side of the sun, years away from triggering the Mythal. The confusion this creates makes the early response chaotic and ineffective. Dragons, who should have been safely secured in their prepared lairs, are caught completely unprepared. Metallic dragons who dedicated their lives to protecting mortal communities suddenly turn on those they swore to defend. Gold dragons, silver dragons, brass and bronze, and copper worms all descend into the same murderous insanity as their chromatic cousins. The betrayal cuts deeper than simple fear. Communities that trusted these dragons implicitly find themselves under attack by creatures who knew every detail of their defenses, every vulnerability in their walls, every place where civilians sheltered during emergencies. Lareth, the king of justice and most powerful gold dragon of his age, recognizes something is wrong with the Mythal itself. In the early days of the Rage, while still maintaining some degree of control, Lareth attempts to shield his followers and allies from the madness spreading through dragonkind. Based on what we know from survivors' accounts, he used his immense magical power to create protective barriers around communities of Bahamut's faithful, trying to buy them time to evacuate or fortify their positions. But the corrupted Mythal proved too strong even for Lareth's legendary will. The madness overwhelmed him, and the King of Justice fell to the same fury, consuming lesser dragons. You witness the psychological impact this has on those who revered Lareth. The gold dragon represented everything good dragons could be: wise, just, merciful, and powerful enough to enforce his ideals. Paladins and clerics dedicated to Bahamut had held up Lareth as proof that dragonkind could transcend their predatory nature and serve higher purposes. When Lareth succumbed to the rage, it shattered faith and broke spirits. If even the King of Justice could not resist the madness, what hope existed for any dragon to maintain their virtue? The corrupted Mythal spreads its influence gradually rather than striking all dragons simultaneously. This could imply Samaster's modifications affected how the magic propagated through dragonkind, where the natural rage triggered by the King Killer Star activated instantly when the comet reached the proper position. The corrupted version seems to roll across Faerun like a wave of insanity. Dragons in some regions succumb days or even weeks before dragons in other areas feel the Mythal's touch. This staggered onset creates horrifying situations where sane dragons watch their kin descend into madness, knowing they will be next, unable to do anything but wait for the inevitable. Some dragons attempt to warn the younger races about what is happening. A bronze dragon in the Moonsea region arrives at a human settlement and explains, her voice already beginning to crack with strain, that the rage is coming and she cannot stop it. She begs them to evacuate, to get as far from her lair as possible, then flies away seeking some isolated place to rampage where she will harm fewer people. Based on accounts that survived, the villagers did not understand or did not believe her. They were still debating whether her warning was genuine when she returned hours later, fully consumed by the rage, and destroyed their homes. The duration of the rage defies all historical precedent. Previous rages lasted anywhere from a few days to perhaps 2 weeks, depending on how long the King Killer Star remained in position to trigger the Mythal. This rage continues for months, stretching into a full year of sustained madness. Dragons who succumb in the early days of 1373 Dale Reckoning remain locked in fury through summer, autumn, and into winter. The constant attacks wear down defenses, exhaust defenders, and create cascading failures as supply lines collapse and reinforcements never arrive. The Cult of the Dragon, Samaster's organization, initially benefits from the chaos. The cult has spent centuries converting living dragons into Dracolages, promising that undeath offers power without vulnerability. When the rage proves that even Dracolages are susceptible to the Mythal's influence, the cult's promises ring hollow. Still, in the early months, many desperate dragons seek out the cult, hoping that transformation into lichdom might somehow protect them from the madness. Some cult cells exploit this desperation, charging enormous prices in treasure and service for transformations they cannot guarantee will help. You need to grasp the sheer geographic scope of the catastrophe. The Mythal's influence covers most of Faerun's settled regions. From the Sword Coast in the west to the Moonsea in the east, from the frozen north down to Kalimshan in the south, dragons rage against anything in their path. Islands in the Sea of Fallen Stars experience attacks from sea dragons and dragon turtles. Underwater cities of aquatic races face assaults from dragons they rarely encountered in normal times. Even the Underdark suffers as deep dragons, those lightless-dwelling worms adapted to subterranean life, turn on the drow Duergar and mind flayer cities in their territories. The economic impact begins immediately, but compounds over time. Trade between cities becomes impossible when dragons hunt the roads and skies. Merchant caravans that do attempt travel require so many guards that the cost makes trade unprofitable. Ships stay in harbor rather than risk sea dragon attacks. Agricultural production collapses as dragons destroy farms during their rampages. Granaries burn, irrigation systems are shattered, and farming communities are wiped out entirely. Cities that depend on food imports begin rationing within weeks. Magical communication networks become crucial lifelines. Sending stones, crystal balls for scrying, and teleportation circles allow cities to coordinate responses and share information about dragon movements. Wizards who can cast teleportation spells find themselves in desperate demand, evacuating civilians from besieged areas or bringing in supplies to cities under blockade. The magical infrastructure, built up over centuries for convenience and trade, suddenly becomes the difference between survival and starvation. Religious communities attempt to understand the rage in theological terms. Why would the gods allow this to happen? Bahamut's faithful pray desperately for their deity to intervene, to calm his children, to show mercy to the innocent dying under dragon claws. Those prayers seem to go unanswered, or at least not answered in the way the faithful hope. Bahamut cannot directly counter the Mythal without violating cosmic laws governing divine intervention. The restrictions placed on the gods by Io, the over-god, limit how directly deities can act in mortal affairs. Bahamut does what he can within these constraints, sending visions to guide his followers and granting blessings that make them more resilient. But he cannot simply end the rage with divine fiat. Tiamat, the five-headed dragon goddess of evil dragonkind, faces similar restrictions, but different motivations. Some scholars later theorize that she might have secretly supported Samaster's work, seeing the rage as an opportunity to eliminate metallic dragons and strengthen chromatic dominance. If so, the plan backfired spectacularly. Chromatic dragons died in huge numbers during the year-long rage, falling to mortal defenders or to each other in mindless combat. The lasting damage to dragon-mortal relations hurt chromatic worms as much as metallics, perhaps more. Since chromatic dragons depended on the younger race's fearful respect to maintain their territorial arrangements. As the months drag on and the rage shows no sign of ending naturally, a desperate search begins for solutions. Archmages study the Mythal, trying to understand how it was corrupted and whether it can be restored or destroyed. The challenge is monumental. Mythals are among the most complex magical constructs ever created, their enchantments layered and interwoven in patterns that take years just to map. Samaster has had decades to study this particular Mythal, and his modifications are hidden within existing structures, like poison mixed into wine. Adventurers and heroes emerge from this chaos, as they always do when the world faces existential threats. A half-golem warrior named Dorn, who harbors a deep hatred for dragons after they destroyed his family, finds himself hired not to kill dragons, but to save them. The irony is not lost on anyone involved. Alongside Dorn travels a woman named Kara, a bard whose songs and magic prove crucial to the quest. They are joined by others, Pavel, Will, Rarin, each bringing unique skills to a task that seems impossible. Their mission, as they come to understand it, is to find Samaster himself and destroy his phylactery. The Lick has tied his soul container to the corrupted Mythal in ways that make separating them extraordinarily difficult. If they can destroy the phylactery based on magical theory, the Mythal might collapse or revert to its original form. It is a thin hope, built on incomplete understanding of magic that predates modern civilization. But it is the only hope available. The quest takes them across Faerun and beyond, following clues and fighting through dangers that would be daunting in peaceful times, and become nearly suicidal during a year when dragons rampage everywhere. They face not just raged dragons, but the cult of the dragon's deliberate resistance. Samaster's followers know that if the phylactery is destroyed, their master dies permanently. The cult mobilizes Dracolages, cultists, and allied monsters to stop Dorn's company at every turn. You stand at the beginning of a year that will test every assumption about dragons, about magic, and about the resilience of mortal civilization. The rage has begun, and no one knows when or how it will end. Cities burn, armies march, wizards cast their most powerful spells, and still the dragons come day after day, week after week, month after month. The world holds its breath and wonders if this time the dragons will finally destroy everything the younger races have built. Section 2. The Day the Sky Burned. The first confirmed attacks begin in scattered regions across Faerun in the opening days of 1373 Dale Reckoning. You hear reports from the Moonsea, from the Sword Coast, from the Heartlands, each describing the same horrifying phenomenon: dragons losing control, attacking without provocation, destroying everything in their path. The pattern suggests the corrupted Mythal's influence spreads geographically. A wave of madness rolling across the continent rather than striking everywhere at once. This gives some communities precious hours or days of warning. The warning alone cannot save them from what is coming. In Alagan, a coastal city in the Vilhan Reach, a copper dragon named Tamarand has served as guardian and advisor for over 2 centuries. The people of Alagan know him by sight, trust him implicitly, and consider him part of their city's identity. Children grow up with stories of Tamarand's wisdom, his humor, his delight in riddles and clever conversation. The dragon maintains a lair in sea caves beneath the city's cliffs, close enough to respond quickly if threats emerge, but distant enough to respect the mortal's autonomy. This arrangement has worked peacefully for generations. When the corrupted Mythal's influence reaches Tamarand, he is flying above Alagan on a routine patrol of the shipping lanes. Witnesses describe seeing him falter mid-flight, his wing beats becoming erratic. For a moment, he seems to recover, circling higher as if trying to distance himself from the city. Then he screams, a sound of pure anguish and rage that echoes across the harbor, and dives directly toward Alagan's waterfront district. Tamarand's breath weapon, a stream of slowing gas and acid, washes over the docks where merchants are unloading the morning's catch. People who moved with purpose moments before find themselves frozen in time, their bodies moving at a fraction of normal speed while their minds race with terror. The copper dragon lands among them, his massive claws crushing those too slow to flee. His tail sweeps through market stalls, reducing wood and canvas to splinters. The attacks are not strategic or calculated. Tamarand destroys randomly, attacking whatever is closest without pattern or purpose. The city guard responds quickly, but their weapons prove inadequate. Spears and arrows bounce off Tamarand's scales or lodge in them without penetrating deep enough to cause serious injury. The dragon's madness makes him unpredictable, sometimes charging toward threats, other times ignoring soldiers entirely to attack unarmed civilians. Based on survivor accounts, Tamarand fought against the rage's control for brief moments, his attacks pausing as if some part of his mind was screaming at him to stop. These pauses never lasted more than seconds before the fury overwhelmed him again. A local wizard named Thessalon attempts to subdue Tamarand with enchantment magic, casting a powerful sleep spell that should have affected even a creature of the dragon's size and power. The spell takes hold momentarily, and Tamarand's eyes droop as magical drowsiness washes over him. Then the Mythal's influence surges, burning through the enchantment like fire through paper. Tamarand awakens more enraged than before, focusing his full attention on Thessalon. The wizard barely escapes via a teleportation contingency, leaving scorch marks on the stones where he stood. The battle for Alagan lasts 3 days. Tamarand does not leave the city, instead claiming it as territory to defend against all comers. He lairs in the ruins of the waterfront district, attacking anyone who approaches. The city's population flees inland, abandoning their homes and businesses. Mercenary companies hired by the city's wealthy merchant families attempt to kill the dragon, but suffer catastrophic losses. Tamarand's centuries of experience, even filtered through madness, make him a devastatingly effective combatant. On the 3rd day, reinforcements arrive from neighboring cities. A company of paladins dedicated to Torm, a circle of druids who specialize in dealing with dangerous creatures, and 2 adventuring bands with experience fighting dragons. The combined force coordinates an assault that finally brings Tamarand down. The copper dragon dies fighting, his last act crushing a paladin in his jaws, even as blessed swords pierce his heart. The victory feels hollow. Alagan's waterfront is destroyed. 230 civilians are dead, and the dragon who protected the city for 2 centuries lies bleeding in the ruins. Similar tragedies unfold across Faerun with soul-crushing regularity. In Cormor, the Forest Kingdom struggles under attacks from multiple dragons who claimed territories within or near its borders. The young king Azon V, barely into adolescence, watches from the palace in Suzil as the kingdom his father died defending burns. The steel regent Elusair Nakacia, Azon's aunt, takes command of Cormor's military response. She is a seasoned warrior, a skilled tactician, and one of the few people in the kingdom with experience fighting dragons in major engagements. Elusair's first priority is protecting the civilian population. She orders mass evacuations from rural areas, concentrating people in fortified cities where the Purple Dragon Knights and War Wizards can mount coordinated defenses. The strategy works to an extent, saving thousands of lives, but it also creates logistical nightmares. Cities designed for populations of 10,000 suddenly house 30,000 refugees. Food supplies strain to the breaking point. Disease spreads through overcrowded districts. The social order frays as desperate people compete for inadequate resources. The Purple Dragons, Cormor's legendary military force, face their greatest test since the kingdom's founding. These knights train for years to achieve the skill and discipline their position requires, learning tactics refined over centuries of warfare, but their training focused primarily on human-scale conflicts, repelling invasions from Sembia or Shentel Keep, fighting bandits and monsters, maintaining order during civil unrest. Fighting dragons requires entirely different approaches. Elusair adapts quickly, reorganizing the Purple Dragons into specialized dragon hunting units. Each unit combines heavy cavalry for mobility, archers with enchanted ammunition for ranged damage, and war wizards for magical support. The knights drill constantly, practicing coordination and learning to identify dragon weak points. They study bestiaries and interview adventurers with dragon-slaying experience. Every scrap of knowledge might mean the difference between victory and annihilation. The first major engagement occurs near Arable when a blue dragon begins terrorizing the eastern farmlands. The dragon, a mature adult named Jacksonidegger, has been relatively peaceful for the past 50 years. Content to claim tribute from local communities in exchange for not attacking them. Under the rage's influence, Jacksonidegger abandons all restraint. He systematically destroys every farm within a 20-mile radius of his lair, killing hundreds and displacing thousands more. Alusair leads 3 purple dragon units and a dozen war wizards to confront Jacksonidegger. The Steel Regent's plan relies on mobility and overwhelming firepower. The cavalry units harass the dragon from multiple directions, forcing him to divide his attention. When Jacksonidegger focuses on one unit, the others charge in to attack his flanks and rear. The war wizards coordinate spell barrages, hitting the dragon with fireballs, lightning bolts, and force missiles, timed to strike when he is distracted by the cavalry. The tactics work, but the cost is severe. Jacksonidegger's lightning breath kills an entire cavalry unit in a single blast, 20 knights, and their mounts reduced to charred corpses. His claws tear through enchanted armor like parchment. His tail sweeps crush men and horses together. When he finally falls, over 40 purple dragons lie dead, and twice that number are wounded. The war wizards have exhausted their prepared spells and must spend days recovering before they can fight again. And Jacksonidegger is just one dragon. Reports indicate at least 15 more are raging within Cormor's borders. In Waterdeep, the City of Splendors, the Open Lord Pirgerin the Paladinson coordinates the city's defense with characteristic efficiency. Waterdeep possesses advantages that smaller cities lack: a large population of powerful wizards, extensive magical defenses built into the city's infrastructure, and the famous Griffin cavalry. Pirgerin mobilizes all these resources, establishing a multi-layered defense network designed to intercept dragons before they reach the city proper. The Griffin cavalry, riders mounted on trained griffins who patrol Waterdeep's skies, becomes the first line of defense. When a dragon approaches, the cavalry engages it at range, using hit-and-run tactics to wound and distract. Their goal is not to kill dragons. Griffin riders lack the firepower for that, but to slow the worms down and drive them toward prepared kill zones. Ground-based ballista batteries wait at strategic points throughout the city, their crews trained to coordinate fire for maximum effect. This system achieves some success. Several younger dragons, juveniles, and young adults driven mad by the rage, are brought down before causing catastrophic damage. But ancient worms, creatures with centuries of combat experience, prove far more difficult to stop. An ancient red dragon approaches Waterdeep from the northeast, flying low over the ocean to avoid early detection. By the time the Griffin cavalry spots her, she is already within striking distance of the dock ward. The red dragon, whose name is never learned, releases a torrent of fire that ignites an entire block of warehouses. The flames spread with terrifying speed, jumping from building to building faster than bucket brigades can respond. Thousands of people live in the dock ward, many of them poor laborers who cannot afford housing in safer districts. They flee in panic, clogging the streets and trampling each other in their desperation to escape the inferno. Pirgerin himself joins the battle, teleporting to the dock ward aboard his griffin mount. The Open Lord is a paladin of legendary power, blessed by Tyr with abilities that make him more than mortal. He charges the ancient red dragon directly, his holy sword blazing with divine radiance. The dragon meets his charge with fire and fury, and for a moment, the two titans clash in a battle that seems pulled from epic poetry. Pirgerin's sword cuts deep into the dragon's shoulder, drawing a roar of pain. The dragon's claws rake across his armor, denting enchanted steel. The fight ends when a team of archmages, led by Kelvin Aronson, the Blackstaff, hits the dragon with a coordinated disintegration spell. The magic tears through the dragon's natural spell resistance, and part of her wing simply ceases to exist. Unable to fly, the dragon crashes into the harbor, creating a wave that floods low-lying streets. She thrashes in the water, drowning slowly while releasing gouts of fire that boil the sea around her. By the time she dies, the dock ward has lost over 300 buildings, and somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people. The Dalelands, those pastoral communities that pride themselves on independence and self-sufficiency, find themselves catastrophically unprepared for dragon attacks. Most dales lack professional armies, relying instead on militia forces of farmers and craftsmen who train a few days each month. Against bandits or orc raiders, these militias suffice. Against raged dragons, they are worse than useless, dying in futile charges that accomplish nothing except adding to the body count. Shadowdale, home to Elminster Aumur and Storm Silverhand, fares better than most dales due to its concentration of magical power. When a green dragon descends on the dale in the third week of the rage, Elminster is actually present, having returned from other business, specifically to help defend his home. The old mage, among the most powerful wizards in Faerun's history, does not bother with subtle magic. He hits the green dragon with a meteor swarm spell that would level a castle, following up with chain lightning and a prismatic spray. The dragon, a cunning female named Chlorocradara, survives the initial barrage and retaliates with her breath weapon. Poisonous gas spreads through Shadowdale's central village, killing dozens before Elminster can conjure winds to disperse it. Storm Silverhand joins the battle, her silver fire, a unique manifestation of Mystra's divine power, burning the dragon's scales and causing wounds that do not heal normally. Together, Elminster and Storm drive Chlorocradara off, but not before she destroys the Old Skull Inn and kills 43 people. In the north, white dragons emerge from their lairs in the spine of the world and descend on the barbarian tribes and 10 towns of Icewind Dale. These dragons are already the most bestial and aggressive of dragonkind under normal circumstances. Under the rage, they become pure predatory instinct given physical form. The tribes fight back with everything they have: axes, spears, tribal magic passed down through generations, and sheer stubborn refusal to die easily. One tribe, the tribe of the Elk, makes a stand at their winter camp when a white dragon named Arveaturace, called Old White Death, attacks. The tribe's warriors form a shield wall, their axes and spears presented toward the circling dragon. Their shaman calls on the spirits of elk and wolf and bear, asking for strength to face the worm. Arveaturace ignores the warriors entirely and collapses the snow-covered ridge above the camp. The resulting avalanche buries the entire tribe in seconds, over 400 people entombed in ice and snow. The dragon then waits, patient as only a predator can be, killing anyone who tries to dig survivors out. Bryn Shander, largest of the 10 towns, becomes a refuge for survivors fleeing dragon attacks. The town's population swells from 2,000 to over 8,000 as refugees pour in from destroyed communities. The speaker of Bryn Shander, a pragmatic woman named Glensather, makes the difficult decision to close the gates once the town reaches capacity. She knows that accepting more refugees will strain resources past the breaking point, leading to starvation and disease that will kill everyone. She also knows she is condemning the people left outside to almost certain death. The decision haunts her, especially when dragons attack those refugees camped outside Bryn Shander's walls, and the screams of the dying carry clearly to people safe inside. Based on later accounts, Glensather never recovered from the guilt, stepping down as speaker within a year of the rage's end, and living out her remaining days in near silence. Sembia, the merchant nation, attempts to solve the dragon problem the way it solves most problems, with money. The merchant princes place enormous bounties on dragon heads, hiring every mercenary company, adventuring band, and dragon-slaying specialist they can find. Gold flows like water, and for a time, the strategy shows results. Professional dragon hunters bring down several worms, claiming bounties large enough to fund small kingdoms. But the strategy has flaws. Some mercenary companies, seeing opportunity, claim to have killed dragons they never encountered, presenting false evidence to collect bounties. Others become so focused on claiming rewards that they ignore coordination with Sembia's military, leading to friendly fire incidents and wasted resources. Worst of all, the bounties attract unscrupulous hunters who cannot distinguish between raged dragons and sane ones. When metallic dragons, who managed to resist the Mythal's influence try to help defend cities. They sometimes find themselves attacked by bounty hunters who see only valuable dragon parts and promised gold. The year drags on with no end in sight. Spring turns to summer, summer to autumn, and still dragons rage. Defenders grow exhausted, resources dwindle, and hope fades. You live in a world where every day might bring a dragon attack, where the sky itself has become a source of terror, and where the established order crumbles under the weight of sustained catastrophe. Section 3. No sanctuary anywhere. 3 months into the rage, the illusion of safety collapses entirely. You discover that stone walls, magical wards, and military strength can only delay dragon attacks, not prevent them. Every refuge proves temporary. Every sanctuary eventually falls, and the psychological toll of constant fear begins breaking even the strongest minds. The corrupted Mythal shows no signs of weakening, and dragons continue their rampages with undiminished fury. This is not a crisis that will resolve itself in days or weeks. This is a fundamental threat to civilization's survival. The distinction between chromatic and metallic dragons, so important in peacetime, becomes almost meaningless under the rage's influence. You watch a gold dragon and a black dragon attack the same village from different directions, not as allies, but as competitors drawn to the same target by the Mythal's madness. The gold dragon, who might have spent centuries as a paragon of justice and mercy, immolates homes with fire breath, while the black dragon dissolves the village well with acid, poisoning the water supply. Neither worm shows any awareness of the other initially, both focused entirely on destruction. Eventually, the two dragons notice each other, and their raged minds identify a new threat to attack. The battle that follows destroys what little remains of the village. Gold dragon fire and black dragon acid wash over buildings already weakened by their initial assaults. The villagers, caught between two titans, die as collateral damage when the gold dragon finally kills the black, tearing out its throat with blessed fangs. She turns immediately back to attacking the survivors, the fight already forgotten in her mindless fury. This pattern repeats across Faerun. Metallic dragons who dedicated their lives to protecting the younger races become their executioners. The betrayal cuts deeper than chromatic dragon attacks ever could. When a red worm burns your village, you at least understand the dragon's nature. Evil acted according to its character. But when a silver dragon who blessed your grandparents' wedding incinerates your own, who sang at festivals and mediated disputes and taught children about the stars, the psychological damage transcends physical destruction. How do you maintain faith in goodness when good itself turns monstrous? Religious communities suffer particularly devastating attacks. You would think temples, blessed by divine power and dedicated to serving the gods, might receive special protection. This assumption proves deadly for thousands. Temples to Bahamut, the platinum dragon himself, become priority targets for raged metallics. Based on what survivors report, this could imply the corrupted Mythal specifically drives dragons toward places and things they valued when sane, forcing them to destroy what they once cherished. A gold dragon who spent decades as a temple guardian returns in the rage and tears the building apart stone by stone. In the city of Elturel, a silver dragon named Argent served as the temple of Bahamut's sworn protector for over a century. She lived in a specially constructed lair beneath the temple, emerging for ceremonies and to counsel young paladins beginning their training. When the Mythal's corruption reaches Argent, she is actually inside the temple in her humanoid form, discussing theology with the high priest. The transformation happens mid-conversation. Her body swells, scales erupting through flesh, wings tearing through the temple's vaulted ceiling. The high priest and acolytes present try to reach her, calling her name and begging her to fight the madness. For a moment, based on accounts from the few survivors, Argent seems to recognize them, her eyes clear, and she speaks a single word that might have been run. Then the rage surges back, drowning whatever remained of her consciousness. Her breath weapon, a cone of paralyzing cold, freezes everyone in the chamber, unable to move but fully conscious. They watch as Argent destroys the temple around them, crushing frozen bodies beneath falling masonry. The paladins and clerics of Bahamut struggle with questions that have no good answers. If their god could not or would not protect his own faithful from his children's madness, what does that say about divine power or divine care? Some lose faith entirely, abandoning their oaths and their temples. Others develop increasingly tortured theological justifications, arguing that this suffering serves some greater purpose beyond mortal understanding. The debates split temples and break fellowships, adding spiritual devastation to physical destruction. Underground communities, those cities and strongholds built in caves and tunnels, discover that going deep offers no protection. Deep dragons, those lightless-dwelling worms adapted to subterranean existence, succumb to the rage just like their surface cousins. The Duergar, gray dwarves of the Underdark, face attacks from deep dragons who normally ignore their cities in exchange for tribute. The attacks are particularly devastating because deep dragon tactics evolved specifically for underground combat. A Duergar stronghold in the tunnels beneath the Sunset Mountains falls when a deep dragon named Smokewisp breaches their defenses. Smokewisp had maintained a profitable arrangement with the Duergar for decades, accepting tribute in worked metal and leaving their mining operations unmolested. Under the rage, she attacks with all the knowledge she gained through years of observing their defenses. She knows which tunnels are structural supports and which can be collapsed safely. She understands their evacuation routes and cuts them off before beginning her assault. She even knows where they store their food and water, targeting those supplies first. The Duergar fight with everything their martial culture can muster: enchanted weapons, stone-shaped magic to create barriers, and their natural ability to grow to giant size. None of it suffices. Smokewisp's breath weapon, a cloud of flesh-corrosive gas, fills the tunnels and lingers for hours. Duergar warriors who escaped the initial attack succumb to the aftereffects, their lungs dissolving as they flee through contaminated air. Of the stronghold's population of nearly 3,000, fewer than 200 escape to tell other Underdark settlements what happened. The Drow, dark elves of the Underdark, respond to deep dragon attacks with characteristic ruthlessness and pragmatism. The matron mothers of Menzoberranzan, the greatest Drow city, recognize immediately that fighting dragons individually wastes resources. They coordinate a city-wide defense, using their extensive magical abilities to create zones of protection. Drow priestesses call on Lolt, their spider goddess, for divine aid. Drow wizards weave enchantments that hide entire districts from dragon senses. These measures work to an extent, but they come at a cost. Lolt's aid requires sacrifice, and the matron mother's pay in slaves and political enemies, offering them to their goddess in blood rituals that would horrify surface dwellers. The magical defenses drain power from other systems, leaving parts of the city vulnerable to attacks from rival houses. Based on the political landscape that emerges after the rage ends, this could imply several Drow houses used the crisis to eliminate competitors, blaming dragon attacks for assassinations they actually committed themselves. Surface kingdoms attempt to establish safe zones, regions protected by concentrated military force and magical wards. Cormor designates Suzil, Arable, and High Horn as fortified refuges, pouring resources into their defense while abandoning smaller settlements. The strategy saves lives, but also condemns thousands. Rural populations receive orders to evacuate to the designated cities, but many cannot make the journey. The elderly, the sick, the very young, and those too poor to afford transportation find themselves trapped in villages they know will be indefensible. You witness one such evacuation firsthand, a farming community in eastern Cormor attempting to reach Arable before dragons find them. The caravan consists of perhaps 500 people, traveling with whatever possessions they can carry or load onto carts. Purple Dragon Knights provide escort, a single patrol of 20 soldiers trying to protect hundreds of civilians. The journey should take 3 days. They make it less than one. A blue dragon spots the caravan from miles away, drawn by the dust cloud raised by so many people moving together. The dragon circles high overhead, patient in the way only a predator can be, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. When the caravan enters a narrow valley with steep sides, the dragon descends. Lightning arcs from the sky, striking the front of the column and the rear simultaneously, cutting off escape routes. Then the dragon lands in the middle, physically blocking the road. The purple dragon knights charge immediately, knowing their only hope is to occupy the dragon's attention while civilians flee. Their lances strike true, punching through scales and drawing blood. The dragon kills them all in less than a minute, lightning breath and claws, reducing the knights to charred meat. Then she turns to the fleeing refugees and hunts them methodically through the valley. Some try to hide in caves or behind rocks. She finds them. Some try to climb the valley walls. She plucks them off like fruit from a tree. By the time she loses interest and flies away, over 400 people are dead. The few survivors reach arable days later, traumatized and broken. Their testimony adds to the growing body of evidence that evacuation itself is often more dangerous than staying put. But staying put means certain death when dragons eventually find your settlement. The impossible choice, die fleeing or die hiding, breaks communities apart as families argue over the best course of action. Maritime trade collapses as sea dragons and dragon turtles hunt shipping lanes. The sea of fallen stars, normally bustling with merchant traffic connecting the nations around its shores, becomes a graveyard of ships. Sea dragons are perfectly adapted for naval combat, able to approach vessels underwater and surface directly beneath them. Ships capsize before their crews even know they are under attack. Dragon turtles ram ships with their massive shells, splintering wooden hulls and creating whirlpools that drag sailors to their deaths. The island city of Prosper, built on a network of bridges and platforms over the water, faces a sustained assault from multiple sea dragons operating in the area. The city's defenses, designed primarily against pirates and rival merchants, prove inadequate against creatures that can attack from below. A dragon turtle surfaces directly beneath one of Prosper's main platforms, smashing through the support pillars. The entire structure, home to over 1,000 people, collapses into the sea. Prosper's mages attempt to drive the sea dragons away using underwater enchantments and summoned water elementals. The tactic shows initial success, creating zones of protection around the city's perimeter. Then an ancient sea dragon, larger and more powerful than the juveniles who began the attacks, arrives. She dispels the magical wards with ease, her own considerable magical abilities overwhelming the city mage's defenses. Prosper falls within a week, its surviving population evacuating on whatever ships can break through the dragon blockade. Food shortages transition from crisis to catastrophe as the rage extends beyond 6 months. Farming communities across Faerun have been destroyed or abandoned. Fields lie unplanted or unharvested, crops rotting, because no one dares venture into open farmland where dragons hunt. Fishing fleets stay in harbor. Merchant caravans carrying food between regions either do not travel or charge prices only the wealthy can afford. Cities begin rationing in earnest, guards posted at granaries to prevent riots. In Waterdeep, the Open Lord implements a complex rationing system based on occupation and need. Soldiers and defenders receive full rations to maintain their ability to fight. Wizards and priests receive enhanced rations to fuel their magical abilities. Common citizens receive barely enough to prevent starvation. The system is logical and necessary, but it breeds resentment. Why should wizards eat well while laborers starve? The fact that wizards are essential to the city's defense does not satisfy empty stomachs. Disease follows malnutrition as weakened immune systems succumb to infections that healthy bodies would fight off. Healers and priests work themselves to exhaustion, treating dysentery, cholera, and fevers that spread through overcrowded refugee districts. Temple infirmaries overflow with the sick and dying. Clerics capable of magical healing must ration their spells as carefully as mundane healers ration medicine. Who receives healing magic when demand far exceeds supply? The young have more years ahead of them, but the experienced are more valuable to the community's survival. These choices weigh heavily on those forced to make them. Adventuring companies, those bands of heroes who normally seek danger for profit and glory, find themselves in desperate demand. Every kingdom, every city, every community with resources to offer wants adventurers to hunt dragons, or defend settlements, or retrieve crucial supplies from dangerous areas. The pay scales are astronomical compared to normal contracts. A successful dragon kill can earn enough gold to retire wealthy, but the mortality rate is equally extreme. You hear stories of famous companies that attempted to fight raged dragons and were annihilated. The Swords of Evening Star, a band of 12 experienced adventurers, engaged a green dragon in the Hulak forest. They had killed dragons before, knew the tactics, and possessed magical items specifically designed for dragon hunting. The green dragon killed them all, using the forest terrain to her advantage, and picking them off one by one over 3 days of running combat. Their bodies were found weeks later, partially dissolved by acid and scattered across miles of forest. Other companies achieve success, but at terrible cost. The Red Ravens, a company of 20 adventurers, managed to kill a blue dragon threatening settlements near the Thunder Peaks. They lost 14 members in the process, including both of the company's founders. The 6 survivors collected their payment, split it evenly, and disbanded the company. Based on accounts from those who knew them afterward, this could imply the trauma of watching friends die broke bonds that had held the company together for years. Some dragons, even in their madness, proved too powerful for mortal forces to defeat. Ancient worms with centuries of combat experience and magical knowledge resist all attempts to bring them down. An ancient red dragon stakes out territory in the Stormhorns Mountains and kills every force sent against her. Cormer loses 3 purple dragon companies trying to dislodge her. a combined force of mercenaries and adventurers hired by Sembian merchants, attacks her lair and is never seen again. She remains in those mountains for the entire duration of the rage, an untouchable force of destruction. The psychological toll on defenders manifests in breakdowns and desertions. Soldiers who showed courage in the first weeks or months crack under constant stress. Sleep deprivation, trauma from watching comrades die, and the seeming endlessness of the crisis combine to break minds. Units that should be combat-ready become hollow shells, soldiers staring blankly or flinching at shadows. Commanders try rotating troops to give exhausted units rest, but there are never enough fresh soldiers to replace those who have broken. In some cases, the pressure leads to atrocities. A garrison defending a town in Sembia decides that refugees fleeing dragon attacks are consuming too many resources and attracting dragon attention. The garrison commander, a decorated veteran with 20 years of service, orders his men to turn refugees away at sword point. When the refugees refuse to leave, claiming they will die if forced into the wilderness, the soldiers attack them. Over 100 unarmed civilians die before a Sembian nobleman riding with a mercenary company arrives and arrests the entire garrison. The nobleman's report to Sembia's ruling council reveals that similar incidents occurred in multiple locations. Defenders under extreme stress made choices they would never consider in peacetime. The council debates how to handle these situations. Executing the soldiers for murder would deprive the nation of needed defenders. Pardoning them would suggest atrocities are acceptable. They settle on a compromise that satisfies no one. The soldiers are stripped of rank and reassigned to suicide missions hunting dragons. Most die within weeks. As autumn turns to winter in 1373 Dale Reckoning, you live in a world fundamentally altered by 9 months of constant dragon attacks. The death toll has climbed into the hundreds of thousands. Entire regions have been depopulated. Economic systems have collapsed. Social order frays at every level. And still the rage continues, with no indication of when or how it might end. The question on everyone's mind is no longer how to defeat the dragons, but simply how to survive until whatever is causing this madness finally stops. Section 4. Fighting the Unstoppable. 9 months into the rage, the accumulated knowledge about what is happening begins coalescing into actionable understanding. You stand in a war council chamber where archmages, dragon representatives, who managed to resist the Mythal's influence, and representatives from multiple kingdoms share their findings. The picture that emerges is both hopeful and terrifying. The Dracorage Mythal has been corrupted, altered in ways that allowed it to activate without the King-Killer star's presence. More importantly, the corruption appears to be maintained by an external source rather than being self-sustaining. If that source can be identified and eliminated based on magical theory, the Mythal might collapse or revert to its dormant state. The external source has a name: Samaster, the Lich who founded the cult of the dragon, who spent centuries studying Dracolic transformation and dragon magic, apparently devoted years to understanding the Dracorage Mythal structure. His motivations, as pieced together from captured cult documents and interrogated cultists, reveal a plan of staggering ambition and cruelty. By corrupting the Mythal and extending the rage indefinitely, Samaster intended to kill vast numbers of dragons while driving survivors into his cult's arms. Desperate dragons, believing transformation into Dracoliches might protect them from future rages, would accept the cult's offer and swell its ranks with powerful undead servants. The plan shows signs of working, at least initially. Dragon casualties during the first 6 months of the rage exceed those from the previous 3 natural rages combined. Chromatic and metallic dragons die in equal proportion, killed by mortal defenders, by each other in mindless combat, or by sheer exhaustion when the rage's fury burns through their physical endurance. Surviving dragons who manage to resist the Mythal or find temporary sanctuary begin seeking out the cult of the dragon, willing to pay almost any price for protection from the madness. But Samaster's plan contains a fatal flaw that his arrogance prevented him from recognizing. By tying his phylactery to the corrupted Mythal, he created a vulnerability. If someone can find and destroy the phylactery, the Mythal loses its corrupted power source. The challenge lies in locating a phylactery that could be anywhere in Faerun or beyond, hidden and protected by a Lich who has had centuries to perfect his defenses. This is where Dorn Greybrook enters the story. Dorn is not a typical hero. He is a half-golem, the result of magical experimentation that fused his human body with construct components. The transformation gave him strength and resilience beyond mortal limits, but left him scarred, both physically and psychologically. His hatred of dragons runs deep, rooted in childhood trauma when chromatic worms destroyed his family. Under normal circumstances, Dorn would cheerfully hunt dragons for sport. The irony that he must now work to save dragonkind is not lost on anyone who knows his history. Dorn's companions bring complementary skills to the quest. Kara is a bard whose magic focuses on enchantment and inspiration. Her songs capable of bolstering allies or confusing enemies. Pavel serves as a priest, his divine magic providing healing and protection that proves crucial during their journey. Will and Rarin round out the group, bringing martial prowess and specialized knowledge. Together, they form a company capable of facing the extraordinary dangers their mission requires. Their quest begins with fragmentary clues gathered from multiple sources. A cult of the dragon safe house raided by Cormyrian forces yields documents referencing a great work in the mountains. A captured Dracolic, tortured by desperate mages, seeking any information that might end the rage. reveals that Samaster has been visiting a specific region repeatedly. Dragons who briefly regain clarity during temporary lulls in the Mythal's influence report, sensing a malevolent presence emanating from a particular direction. These pieces slowly form a picture pointing toward the region where the original Dracorage Mythal's physical anchors are located. The journey takes Dorn's company across a Faerun, transformed by months of dragon attacks. They travel through regions that were prosperous farmland and are now scorched wasteland. They pass through villages that exist only as ruins. Buildings collapsed and populations vanished. They encounter refugees, displaced people wandering in search of safety that no longer exists. The scale of destruction they witness hardens their resolve. This must end, whatever the cost. Along the way, they face opposition from multiple sources. The cult of the dragon recognizes the threat Dorn's company represents and sends forces to stop them. Cultist ambushes become a regular occurrence, fanatics willing to die to protect their master's plan. Dracoliches, undead dragons still suffering under the rage's influence, attack with the same mindless fury as living worms, but without the vulnerabilities that come with flesh and blood. Even other adventuring companies, misled by cult agents, or simply seeking the same goal through different means, sometimes become obstacles rather than allies. One particularly harrowing encounter occurs in the Thunder Peaks when a raged red dragon spots the company crossing an exposed ridge. The dragon, a mature adult named Flamestrike, dives toward them with talons extended. Dorn's golem strength allows him to withstand impacts that would shatter a normal human, and he meets the dragon's charge directly, driving his enchanted sword into the worm's chest, even as her claws tear furrows in his metallic flesh. Kara's magic confuses the dragon momentarily. Her enchantment spells creating illusions that make the company appear to be in multiple places at once. Pavel channels divine power, creating a barrier of blessed light that the dragon cannot cross without pain. Will and Rarin focus their attacks on the dragon's wings, trying to ground her and prevent escape. The battle lasts only minutes, but feels like hours. Flamestrike's fire breath washes over the company repeatedly, forcing Pavel to use precious healing magic to keep his companions alive. Dorn suffers burns that would kill a normal person 3 times over. His golem physiology, the only thing preventing his death. They win eventually, driving Flamestrike away with enough injuries that she seeks easier prey. But the victory costs them. Will sustains burns across half his body. Rarin's arm is broken where the dragon's tail struck him. Even Dorn, with his enhanced durability, needs time to repair the damage his construct components suffered. They hole up in a cave for 3 days, while Pavel exhausts his healing magic, and they all recover enough to continue. While Dorn's company pursues Samaster, other groups attempt different solutions. a coalition of archmages in Candlekeep continues studying the Dracorage Mythal itself, hoping to find a way to dispel or neutralize the corruption without needing to destroy the phylactery. Their research reveals details about the Mythal's original construction and structure. The original enchantment was anchored by physical objects, standing stones placed at specific locations, and empowered with elven high magic. These stones form a network that channels and focuses the Mythal's power. Based on this understanding, some mages theorize that destroying enough of the anchor stones might collapse the entire Mythal, corrupted or not. Expeditions set out to locate and destroy these stones, but the task proves extraordinarily difficult. The stones are ancient, placed thousands of years ago in locations chosen for magical significance rather than accessibility. Many are in regions now controlled by raged dragons. Others are protected by magical wards that have grown more powerful over millennia. Several expeditions simply vanish, their fates unknown. One expedition to a standing stone in the Anauroch Desert achieves partial success. The team, led by a Halruan wizard named Zalathorm, locates the stone after weeks of searching. The stone itself is a monolith of black granite, inscribed with elven runes that glow with faint silver light. Zalathorm's team begins the ritual that should shatter the stone and sever its connection to the Mythal. They are halfway through when a flight of blue dragons, drawn by the magical energies the ritual releases, descends on their position. The wizards try to maintain the ritual while defending themselves, but the task proves impossible. Blue dragon lightning disrupts their concentration, breaking the careful magical patterns they need to sustain. The ritual collapses catastrophically, releasing all its accumulated energy in an uncontrolled explosion. The standing stone survives intact. Half the expedition dies in the blast or to dragon attacks. The survivors flee into the desert, abandoning the attempt. Military responses to the rage evolve as defenders gain experience fighting dragons. Tactics that failed in the early months are refined or discarded. New approaches, born from desperate innovation, show promise. In Cormer, the Steel Regent Elusair develops a strategy based on mobile fortifications and coordinated ambushes. Rather than waiting for dragons to attack, her purple dragon units actively hunt worms, using scouts and scrying magic to locate targets, and then overwhelming them with concentrated force. The strategy achieves some success. Several dragons fall to purple dragon ambushes, killed before they can leverage their aerial mobility advantage. But the cost remains terrible. For every dragon killed, Elusair loses dozens of knights and multiple war wizards. The kingdom's military strength drains away with each victory. By late autumn, Cormer has lost over half its purple dragons and 2/3 of its war wizards. The survivors are exhausted, traumatized, and increasingly doubtful that victory is possible. In Waterdeep, The Archmage Kelvin Aronson attempts a different approach. Rather than fighting dragons directly, he focuses on protecting the city through layered magical defenses. His plan creates multiple barrier zones around Waterdeep, each designed to slow dragons and channel them toward prepared kill zones. The innermost barriers are strong enough to stop even ancient worms, at least temporarily, while defenders prepare their response. The system works well against younger dragons, but struggles with truly ancient worms. An ancient blue dragon tests Kelvin's defenses in the 10th month of the Rage, methodically probing each barrier for weaknesses. The dragon is patient, spending days circling the city and launching occasional attacks to gauge response times and defensive capabilities. When she finally commits to a full assault, she strikes at the precise point where 3 barrier zones meet, exploiting a gap in coverage that she identified through careful observation. Kelvin responds immediately, teleporting to the breach and engaging the dragon personally. The Archmage is among the most powerful wizards alive, and his magical arsenal reflects decades of study and preparation. He hits the dragon with spells that would annihilate armies: meteor swarms, prismatic sprays, disintegration beams. The ancient blue weathers the assault and responds with lightning that arcs between Waterdeep's metal structures, spreading to hit multiple targets. The battle between Archmage and Ancient Worm lasts over an hour, and when it finally ends with the dragon's retreat, an entire district of Waterdeep lies in ruins. As the year draws toward its close, Dorn's company finally locates Samaster's phylactery. The final confrontation occurs in a hidden sanctum in the mountains, a place where the boundaries between planes grow thin and the weave itself shows signs of the corruption Samaster introduced. The Lich himself is present, his undead form sustained by the same dark magic that powers his phylactery. He is not alone. Dracoliches and cultist servants guard the sanctum, and the very environment is hostile, twisted by years of necromantic experimentation. The battle that follows tests every skill the company possesses. Dorn's enhanced strength allows him to fight Dracoliches in melee combat, trading blows with creatures that could tear normal warriors apart. Kara's magic disrupts Samaster's spells, her bardic abilities creating zones of silence that prevent vocal components and inspirational songs that keep her companions fighting past normal endurance. Pavel's divine magic proves crucial, his connection to Lathander providing healing and turning abilities that force undead servants back. Samaster is ancient, cunning, and prepared. He has spent centuries as a Lich, perfecting his magical abilities and accumulating power. His spells bypass normal resistances, targeting vulnerabilities the company did not know they had. He summons undead horrors from other planes, throws walls of force that separate the company and allow him to focus on individuals, and uses his phylactery's connection to the Mythal to drain magical energy from their enchanted equipment. The tide turns when Dorn reaches the phylactery itself. The object is a crystallized dragon heart, pulsing with dark energy and inscribed with runes that writhe and shift. Destroying it should be straightforward, but Samaster has protected it with layers of defensive magic. Each layer must be dispelled or overcome before Dorn can strike the physical object, while the rest of the company holds off Samaster and his servants. Dorn works methodically to breach each defense. Pavel provides the crucial support, channeling divine power through Dorn to burn away necromantic wards. Kara's counterspells disrupt Samaster's attempts to reinforce the phylactery's protections. Will and Rarin keep Dracolages occupied, their hit-and-run tactics preventing the undead dragons from interfering with Dorn's work. Finally, with the last ward fallen, Dorn drives his sword into the crystallized heart. The phylactery shatters, releasing a wave of energy that ripples across Faerun. Samaster screams, his undead form beginning to dissolve as the destruction of his soul container initiates his final death. More importantly, the corrupted Mythal loses its power source. The enchantments Samaster wove into its structure unravel, the twisted magic burning away like fog before the sun. Across the continent, dragons in the grip of the rage begin to regain their sanity. The return to clarity is not instantaneous or uniform. Some dragons shake off the madness immediately, their minds clearing as the Mythal's influence vanishes. Others experience a gradual recovery, the fury fading over hours or days. A few, particularly those who suffered under the rage for the entire year, never fully recover, their minds too damaged by months of forced insanity. But the vast majority of surviving dragons return to themselves, and with that return comes the horrifying realization of what they have done. You witness the immediate aftermath in a city still recovering from dragon attacks. A bronze dragon lands in the central square, his movements cautious and uncertain. Citizens flee in terror, expecting another attack. But the dragon does not attack. He speaks, his voice hoarse from months of roaring, asking what date it is, how long the rage lasted. When someone brave enough to answer tells him nearly a year has passed, the dragon collapses, his body shaking with sobs. He remembers everything he did under the rage's influence and wishes desperately that he did not. The rage of dragons is over, but its consequences have only begun to unfold. Section 5. The Scars That Remain. The final death toll from the year of rogue dragons will never be known with precision. Record-keeping systems collapsed during the chaos. Entire communities were wiped out without survivors to report their losses, and countless bodies were incinerated beyond recognition or buried under rubble, never fully excavated. Conservative estimates place the mortal death toll at over 300,000 across Faerun. Some scholars argue the true number approaches 500,000 when accounting for secondary deaths from starvation, disease, and injuries that proved fatal weeks or months after the rage ended. Dragon casualties, while smaller in absolute numbers, represent a catastrophic loss of ancient, irreplaceable beings. Over 2,000 dragons died during the year-long rage, roughly 1/3 of Faerun's entire dragon population. You stand in what was once a thriving market district, 6 months after Samaster's phylactery was destroyed and the rage finally ended. Workers have cleared the main streets of rubble, but entire sections of the city remain untouched ruins. Buildings stand like hollow shells, their roofs collapsed and walls blackened by dragon fire. Weeds grow through cracked cobblestones. The population, which numbered 30,000 before the rage, has shrunk to less than 12,000. The rest are dead, fled to other regions, or simply vanished into the chaos. The immediate aftermath brings both relief and horror. Relief that the attacks have stopped, that the sky no longer represents a constant threat, that some form of normal life might eventually resume. Horror as people begin comprehending the full scope of what was lost. Families discover that loved ones who went missing during evacuations are never coming back. Communities realize that cultural treasures accumulated over centuries were destroyed in moments. Nations confront the reality that their military strength, their economic foundation, and their social structures have been shattered. Dragons experience their own version of this horror. As sanity returns, they remember everything they did under the rage's influence. Metallic dragons, who spent lifetimes building reputations as protectors and paragons of virtue, must confront memories of slaughtering innocents. The psychological impact proves devastating. Some dragons, unable to bear the guilt, choose death. A silver dragon in the Moonsea deliberately flies into a mountain at full speed, killing herself rather than living with the memory of the children she murdered. A gold dragon allows adventurers to kill him, refusing to defend himself and accepting death as just punishment for his actions. Other dragons seek redemption through service, dedicating themselves to repairing the damage they caused. A bronze dragon who destroyed a coastal village spends decades helping rebuild it, using his magic to assist construction and his treasure hoard to fund the work. He labors tirelessly, knowing that nothing he does can truly atone for the lives he took, but unable to simply do nothing. The villagers' response is mixed. Some appreciate his efforts and gradually come to forgive him, understanding he acted under magical compulsion. Others can never look at him without seeing the monster who killed their families, and his presence brings pain rather than comfort. The distinction in how chromatic versus metallic dragons process their guilt reveals fundamental differences in their psychology. Chromatic dragons, already inclined towards selfishness and cruelty, generally feel less remorse about their actions during the rage. Many view the year as merely an extension of their normal behavior, forced upon them rather than chosen. but not fundamentally different from how they would act given freedom from consequences. Some chromatic worms even take pride in the destruction they caused, cataloging their kills and claiming territories based on which dragon killed the most during the rage. Metallic dragons cannot adopt this perspective. Their entire identity centers on being better than their chromatic cousins, on using their power responsibly and protecting rather than preying upon the younger races. The rage stripped away that identity and revealed that beneath their civilized veneer, they possess the same capacity for mindless violence as any red or black worm. This realization shakes metallic dragon society to its foundations. If they can be forced to betray everything they claim to believe, what does that say about the validity of their claimed moral superiority? The king of justice, Lareth, does not survive to grapple with these questions. The gold dragon died during the rage, killed in circumstances that remain somewhat unclear based on fragmentary accounts and magical divinations conducted afterward. This could imply Lareth fell fighting other raged dragons while attempting to protect mortal settlements, even as the Mythal's influence consumed him. His death represents more than the loss of one dragon, however powerful. Lareth symbolized the ideal that dragonkind could transcend their predatory nature and serve higher purposes. His fall during the rage becomes a rallying point for those who argue that dragons, regardless of their claimed alignment, are fundamentally too dangerous to coexist with civilized society. Dragon hunting, already common during the rage, intensifies afterward. Adventuring companies and professional monster slayers find themselves overwhelmed with contracts. Kings and nobles offer bounties for dragon heads, with prices scaling based on the worm's age and power. The important distinction is that these hunts no longer discriminate between chromatic and metallic dragons. A gold dragon who tries to return to her role protecting a coastal city is killed by the very people she once defended, ambushed while she sleeps, using knowledge she had shared with them about draconic vulnerabilities. The systematic hunting of dragons over the years following the rage approaches what later scholars will term attempted genocide. Dragon populations drop precipitously as hunters kill worms faster than they can reproduce. White dragons in the north become critically endangered, their population reduced by over 80% within a decade. Brass dragons in the southern deserts face similar devastation. Even ancient worms, creatures who survived for millennia, fall to well-coordinated attacks by companies equipped with dragon-slaying weapons and detailed knowledge of draconic weaknesses. Some dragons respond by fleeing Faerun entirely. They migrate to other continents, seeking regions where the rage never reached and anti-dragon sentiment is less intense. Others retreat to different planes of existence. Sigil, the city at the center of the plains, experiences an influx of dragon residents seeking sanctuary from the hunts sweeping the prime material plane. The elemental plane of air becomes home to several dragon communities that abandon their ancestral lairs rather than face constant attack. These exiled dragons carry deep bitterness about being punished for actions they committed while under magical compulsion beyond their control. Other dragons choose violent resistance, forming unprecedented alliances to present unified fronts against mortal aggression. A cabal of red dragons in the Giants Run Mountains declares total war on all humanoid settlements within their claimed territory. They conduct systematic raids, destroying caravans and burning towns, until a coalition army of Cormyrian and Sembian forces, supported by powerful mages from Halriwa, tracks them to their lairs and eliminates them. The war lasts 4 years and kills thousands more on both sides, adding yet another layer of tragedy to regions still recovering from the rage itself. The cult of the dragon, Samaster's organization, suffers catastrophic losses. The Lick's destruction removes the cult's founder and primary source of Dracolic transformation, knowledge. More importantly, the rage proved that Dracoliches are not immune to the Dracorage Mythal, destroying the cult's central promise to prospective dragon converts. Many dragons who might have considered transformation now refuse, unwilling to accept undeath that offers no protection from future rages. The cult's living dragon allies abandon the organization en masse, leaving it with only its undead members and humanoid followers. Without a constant stream of new dragon converts, the cult enters a period of decline that will reshape it fundamentally. The Dracoliches who remain become increasingly isolated and paranoid, fighting among themselves for control of the organization's diminished resources. Humanoid cultists, lacking draconic leadership, splinter into competing factions with divergent goals. Some maintain Samaster's vision of draconic supremacy through undeath. Others repurpose the cult's infrastructure for different ends, using its network of safe houses and hidden lairs for smuggling, assassination, or simple banditry. The fate of the Dracorage Mythal itself becomes a subject of intense debate and action. Samaster's corruption was removed when his phylactery was destroyed, but the underlying mythal remains intact and dormant. The King Killer Star will eventually return to a position where it can trigger the enchantment, bringing another rage unless something is done. A coalition forms dedicated to destroying or permanently neutralizing the mythal, composed of human archmages, elven high mages willing to undo their ancestors' work, dragon representatives from both chromatic and metallic species, and even reformed cult of the dragon members who possess relevant knowledge. The work proves extraordinarily dangerous and slow. The mythal draws power from physical anchor points, standing stones placed thousands of years ago, and empowered with elven high magic. Each stone must be located, studied, and carefully destroyed without triggering magical backlash that could kill everyone involved. Some stones are in regions still controlled by hostile dragons. Others are protected by wards that have grown more powerful over millennia. Several expeditions to destroy anchor stones end in disaster, their members killed by environmental hazards, defensive enchantments, or simple bad luck. Despite setbacks, the coalition makes gradual progress. One by one, the anchor stones fall. Each destruction weakens the Mythal's overall structure, making the next stone easier to neutralize. The final anchor, based on coalition records, was destroyed approximately 3 years after the rage ended. With all its physical foundations removed, the Dracorage Mythal collapses entirely, its enchantments unraveling into harmless magical residue. The King Killer Star will never trigger another rage. Dragons and mortals alike breathe easier knowing that particular nightmare cannot recur. The political landscape of Faerun transforms in response to the catastrophe. Nations that weathered the rage most effectively emerge stronger. Their competent leadership and effective defenses earning respect and influence. Cormor, despite suffering terrible losses, maintains its regional power due to the Steel Regent Elusair's skilled command and the Purple Dragon's courage. Waterdeep similarly preserves its status as a major power, its magical defenses and wealth allowing rapid reconstruction. Sembia, conversely, enters a period of decline and instability. The merchant princes who dominated pre-rage politics failed catastrophically to protect their cities. Their assumption that wealth could solve any problem proved disastrously wrong when dragons rained fire on their treasuries. Revolutionary sentiment builds among the surviving population, who blame the merchant elite for prioritizing profit over proper defenses. Within 2 years of the rage's end, Sembia experiences a series of coups that reshape its government, deposing the old merchant council and installing military commanders and populist leaders. The Daelands fragment further, with several Dales ceasing to exist as political entities after losing their entire populations. Other Dales band together for mutual protection, forming defensive alliances unprecedented in their history. The trauma of watching trusted metallic dragons destroy communities creates a xenophobic streak in Dale culture that persists for generations. Outsiders, especially those associated with magic or dragons, face suspicion and hostility for decades. The economic recovery takes generations. Destroyed infrastructure must be rebuilt. Roads, bridges, aqueducts, granaries, fortifications. The cost exceeds most kingdoms' treasuries. Waterdeep spends nearly its entire monetary reserve on reconstruction, leaving the city financially vulnerable for years. Cormor takes out massive loans from surviving Sembian merchants and foreign banks, incurring debts that burden the kingdom for decades. Smaller communities simply lack resources to rebuild and either merge with neighbors or fade into history. trade routes slowly reestablish, but with new realities. Caravans travel in larger, better defended groups. Flying courier services, once common, nearly disappear as people become unwilling to travel by air where dragons might attack. Shipping lanes require constant naval patrol, as sea dragons remain a persistent threat even after the rage ends. Insurance costs for merchants skyrocket, with insurers demanding proof of dragon-specific protections before covering shipments. Dragon hordes, scattered and destroyed during the rage, create temporary economic chaos. Centuries of accumulated wealth suddenly enter circulation as adventurers and scavengers loot abandoned lairs. The influx of gold and magical items causes inflation in some markets and gluts in others. A magical sword that would have cost hundreds of gold pieces before the rage can be purchased for a fraction of that afterward. Because so many dragon hordes containing magical weapons flooded the market. Conversely, food prices remain elevated for years because agricultural production was devastated and demand far exceeds supply. The cultural trauma manifests in art, literature, and religion for generations. Bards compose songs about the rage, tragic ballads that tell stories of individual loss and collective suffering. The fall of Lareth becomes particularly popular, an epic poem structured as tragedy where a noble hero succumbs to an inescapable curse. These songs spread across Faerun, becoming part of shared cultural memory that ensures future generations remember what happened. Artists paint massive canvases depicting dragons descending on cities, defenders making last stands, and the aftermath of destruction. These paintings hang in palaces and temples as visceral reminders of the catastrophe. Sculptors create monuments to the fallen, stone memorials listing thousands of names. In Waterdeep, a memorial garden is planted on the site where over 800 people died in dragon fire. Each tree represents multiple lives lost, creating a forest of memory that survivors visit to remember friends and family. Religious communities grapple with theological questions that have no easy answers. Followers of Bahamut struggle with understanding how their god, who claims dominion over dragonkind, allowed such devastation. The debates split temples and break fellowships. Some lose faith entirely, concluding that if Bahamut could not or would not prevent the rage, he is either too weak to deserve worship or too indifferent to merit devotion. Others develop more nuanced theological positions, arguing that even gods operate within cosmic constraints, and that Bahamut did what he could within limits imposed by Io and the divine compact. You encounter children who grew up during the rage, and their psychology reveals deep scars. These children who watched parents die or lived through attacks themselves develop into adults with profound trauma. They flinch at loud noises, experience nightmares featuring dragons, and struggle with anxiety that magical healing cannot fully address. Some channel their trauma into dragon hunting, becoming obsessive in their need to eliminate the threat dragons represent. Others become pacifists, unable to bear any form of violence after witnessing such extreme devastation during their formative years. Educational systems change to incorporate dragon threat awareness. Schools teach children how to recognize dragon approach, where to find shelter during attacks, and basic tactics for escape and evasion. Some educators criticize this approach, arguing it traumatizes children unnecessarily and perpetuates fear that prevents healing. Others insist preparation is essential, that while the Dracorage Mythal has been destroyed, dragons remain dangerous and future conflicts are inevitable. Dragon society itself transforms profoundly. Before the Rage, dragons were largely solitary creatures who interacted with their own kind primarily for mating or territorial disputes. After the Rage, both chromatic and metallic dragons develop stronger communal bonds. They share information about safe havens, warn each other about dragon hunting companies, and occasionally cooperate for mutual defense. This unprecedented dragon cooperation alarms mortal governments who fear organized dragon resistance to the hunting campaigns. Some dragons advocate for peaceful coexistence, arguing that continued conflict benefits no one. These dragons, mostly metallics, but including a few chromatic reformers, attempt diplomatic outreach to mortal governments. They offer their services in exchange for protection from hunters, propose treaties establishing dragon sanctuaries, and argue that cooperation serves mutual interests. The efforts achieve limited success. A few enlightened rulers, recognizing that dragon knowledge and power could benefit their kingdoms, accept these overtures. Most reject them outright, their populations too traumatized to accept any dragon presence. The legacy of the Rage extends far beyond immediate casualties and destruction. It reshapes how mortals view dragons, how dragons view mortals, and how both species approach their shared world. Trust, once broken on such a catastrophic scale, proves nearly impossible to restore. The careful balance that existed before 1373 Dale reckoning never truly returns. Instead, a new paradigm emerges, one of mutual suspicion, heavily armed deterrence, and barely controlled hostility. Decades later, you walk through rebuilt cities and replanted forests, and evidence of the Rage remains everywhere. Scorch marks on ancient stone that no amount of scrubbing can fully remove. Memorial gardens where buildings once stood, laws and customs born from trauma that persist long after their original purpose fades from memory. The Rage of dragons becomes mythologized, transformed from historical event into cautionary tale. Its horrors simultaneously exaggerated and minimized as time passes and direct memory fades. But for those who lived through it, who watched the sky burn and felt the ground shake beneath dragon footfalls, the Rage remains forever immediate and real. You carry those memories until your final breath, passing them to children and grandchildren who never experience the terror directly, but inherit its shadow nonetheless. The year of rogue dragons, 12 months that changed everything, becomes the defining catastrophe of an era, the disaster against which all other crises are measured and found wanting. The world survived, but it emerged fundamentally altered. The relationship between dragons and the younger races will never return to what it was. The easy trust, the casual coexistence, the assumption that good dragons could be relied upon as protectors and allies, all of that died during the Rage. What replaced it is more cautious, more cynical, and infinitely sadder. Both species lost something irreplaceable during that terrible year, and the scars remain long after the physical wounds have healed. If you found this deep dive into one of Faerun's darkest periods compelling, please consider liking this video and subscribing to the channel. Your support helps me continue exploring the rich lore and hidden histories of the realms, bringing you more content about the events, characters, and places that make this world so fascinating. Thank you for joining me on this journey through the Rage of Dragons. And until next time, may your skies remain clear and your paths safe from draconic fury.